يلا المجموعة الأولى تبدأ.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today we're presenting to you the G20 initiatives and the kingdom's role in the light of Corona pandemic. Next, please. These are the responsibilities of each one. I'm presenting the G20. So can you go to the next slide, please? And one after it. We're going to the introduction of the G20. So what's the G20? The G20 is the group of 20, and it's the premier forum for international economic cooperation. The G20 brings together the leaders of both developed and developing countries from every continent. Collectively, G20 members represent around 80% of the world's economic output, 2/3 of the global population, and 3/4 of international trade. Throughout the year, representatives from G20 countries gather to discuss financial and socio-economic issues. Next. The G20 originated in 1999 at the level of finance ministers and central bank governors only. Then the G20 used to gather for high-level discussions on microfinancial issues only. And in the wake of the 2008 global financial crisis, the G20 elevated to include the leaders of member countries. And the first G20 Leaders Summit took place in Washington, D.C. In November 2008. Consequently, the G20 agenda expanded beyond microfinancial issues to include also socio-economic and development issues. We also have here the Kingdom's approach for steering the collective work in 2020. One, focus on where the G20 can make a difference and deliver concrete actions. Two, cooperate to forge consensus on challenging issues. Three, adopt results originated, forward-looking and sustainable perspectives. Four, stand fully prepared to take preventive measures and address consequences for unforeseen circumstances affecting the global economy, such as what we have now, the COVID-19 pandemic. Next. So how does the G20 work? The G20 meetings will be discussing the global economic realities in order to achieve impressive results in the global economic environment. And it will also discuss common global issues, such as empowering human and women, human resources and preventing environmental resources. And we have here the engagement groups that work under the umbrella of the G20 to develop policy recommendations that are formally submitted to the G20 leaders for consideration. So we have the B20, which represents the private sector of business. And then we have the C20, which represents the civil society organizations. And the L20 includes labor unions across the G20 member countries. And the T20 is a network of think tanks and researchers. And W20 represents the interests of women. S20 represents the science community. U20 includes mayors from cities across the G20 city representatives. And Y20 brings together young leaders from across the G20 member countries. Next. Here we have the four main objectives of the G20. The first objective is ensuring global economic stability. Two, building collaborative platform for the largest economies economies in the world. Sorry. 3, preventing future economic crisis. 4, achieving balanced global economy. Next. Going specifically to the G20 Saudi Arabia 2020, it will mark the first time the Kingdom hosts a G20 summit, and it will mark the second time a G20 summit takes place in the Middle East. Also, the 2020 G20 Leaders Summit will be the 15th meeting of the G20 leaders, and the presidency will host more than 100 events. And here we also have the members of the G20. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Amina, and I'm going to talk about COVID-19. Next slide, please. What is COVID-19? Coronavirus is a large family of viruses that attack respiratory system and causes several diseases, from common cold to more severe diseases such as Middle East respiratory syndrome and severe acute respiratory syndrome. Next. The history of virus. First COVID-19 case on December 31st, 2019. The WHO Regional Office in China informed the cases of phenomena of unknown causes detected in Wuhan City, Hubei province of China. On January 7th, 2020, the Chinese authorities announced that they had identified a new virus that causes these cases. What is the origin of the virus? It is believed that the COVID originated in animal, and most cases appeared in the seafood and animal markets in Wuhan. Next. How long does coronavirus last? The infection period starts from 1 day to 3 days. The symptoms stays from 2 to 3 weeks, mostly 14 days, after the exposure to the virus. The cure. There are no certain vaccine or medicine for COVID-19, but the symptom can be reduced or controlled with some flu medication. Next. Key action for COVID-19 prevention, personal hygiene, practice safe sneezing and coughing etiquettes, avoid close contact with anyone who has common cold or flu symptoms, avoid unsafe handling animals, whether they are wild or on the farm. Thank you for listening.
هو next. مها ومرام ندى.
the need for targeted economic policies, given that the economic repercussions arise in particular from the occurrence of serve shocks in specific sectors. Policymakers will one have to implement fundamental measures directed at the level of public finance, monetary policy, and financial market to help affected household and business. Next. Households and businesses affected by supply disruption and declining demand can be targeted in order to receive cash transfers, wage subsidies, and tax relief, so that people are provided with the assistance to meet their needs, and businesses are provided to maintain their safety. For example, Italy has taken various measures, including extending deadlines for paying corporate taxes in the affected areas, expanding the coverage of the wage supplement fund to provide income support for laid off workers. Korea has provided wage subsidies for small trades, increased home care benefits and job seekers, and China has cancelled social security contributions from businesses, enterprises on a temporary basis for those who have been laid off. Unemployment insurance can be increased temporarily by extending its period, increasing benefits, or easing the eligibility requirements for benefiting from them. In the event that leave for sick or family reasons and not included in the regular benefits, governments should consider financing them and allow workers who are ill or who take care of them to stay at home without fear of losing their job during the period of the pandemic. Central banks should remain prepared to provide ample liquidity to banks and non-bank financial companies, particularly those who lend to small and medium-sized enterprises, which may have been less prepared for serve disruption, and governments can offer temporary and targeted credit guarantees to meet these companies' liquidity needs in the short term. For example, Korea has expanded lending for business operations and loan guarantees for affected small and medium enterprises. Financial market regulations and oversight would also encourage extensions of loan maturities temporarily and on the basis of a specific time frame. Throughout border monetary stimulation, such as lowering basic interest rates or purchasing assets, confidence can be raised and financial markets supported if the market faces risk or significantly tightening financial conditions. While the action taken by large central banks also generate favorable repercussions for countries at risk. A board-based fiscal stimulates that consist with fiscal space could help increase aggregate demand, but is likely to be more effective as corporate operations begin to return to normal. Given the widespread spread of the pandemic at the level of large number of countries, the board cross-border economic ties, as well as the significant effects of confidence that limit economic activity and affect financial commodity markets. It is clear that there are as clear as argument for coordinating the response at the international level. The international community must assist countries with limited help capacities to avoid a humanitarian disaster. The International Monetary Fund is ready to support countries at risk throughout various lending facilities, including those that allow the disbursement of resources on an urgent basis in case of emergency, which could reach $50 billion to emerging and low-income market countries.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mahad Adiani. I am speaking about G20 initiative to improve the economy and a G20 initiative to combat Corona. Next. The Kingdom and the Presidency for the year 2020. The Kingdom plays a crucial role in leading and coordinating the G20 agenda and international efforts to combat the emerging coronavirus pandemic in order to ensure the provision of the necessary means to protect lives and livelihoods and preserve the global economy. G20, a landmark gesture to suspend debit service payments. The G20 International Financial Architecture Working Group discussed development and the implementation of the G20 initiative to suspend debit service payments. The G20 member states agreed that the beneficiaries are the poorest countries in order to lift the economic and financial by the emerging coronavirus COVID-19. The G20 is considering a systematic methodology to ensure the provision of the sustainable financing in the long term through several means, including the following local financial markets, encouraging private sector investment, reducing the risks of fluctuation in capital flows between countries and enhancing cooperation between countries and financial international organizations. G20 initiative to combat Corona. From the odds, G20 countries focused on efforts to combat the pandemic at the health level with the aim of helping to protect and shape a better future by electing more than 21 US dollar since the beginning of the crisis for diagnostic tools, vaccines, and treatment for the benefit of humanity. Thank you for listening.
Alaikum, I'm Maram and today I'm going to talk about the G20 initiative. Next slide, please. One of the G20 initiatives is the G20 YEA Virtual Summit for Entrepreneurs. It was only for 2 days on YouTube. The shortcut of YEA is Young Entrepreneur Alliance. Next, please. Next, please, Miss. In this event, entrepreneurs were hosted to talk about their companies and their obstacle that they faced them. And one of the biggest obstacle for this year, which is COVID-19, and how they were able to take it as an opportunity, not as an obstacle, and how the work life have been changed, uh, and more under the topic pair and post COVID-19 transformation new norm. Also, there was a word from custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz and his son Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Both of them, they says that the G20 is a great opportunity to get more knowledge and to have a lot of experiences from other countries to develop our country. Next. One of the hosts of the program was Ayman As-Sanad, who is the owner of Mersul Company. Mersul Company is a Saudi Arabian company, deliver and logistics platform. Mersul Company, it has a lot of services like delivery things, like for example food or something that you wanted to deliver to someone's house or a company. And they started just in Riyadh. And now they have this app in most of the kingdom. Next. Also, there was Abu Dakhir. She's a founder and CEO of Falak Business Hub, also in Nasha, and she's a co-founder of the Social Advisors. Also, she's a pilot and writer. She had a book called Zibda. This book talks about how people could be an entrepreneurs and how could they develop themselves to be better. Also, as I see her as a great role model to me. Next, please. Also, there was more topic like the impact of entrepreneurship on the economy, entrepreneur across borders, building and replacing a successful entrepreneurial ecosystem, education and innovation, unlocking CVs. Next. And thank you for your listening. And that's it. Thank you.